One day, all the animals on the farm were left without food. Then one little red hen decided to go to the field and look for something to eat. It was sad to walk alone, so the hen went to the cow and invited her to walk together. But the cow did not want to go anywhere, and therefore said that she was very hot and she would stay on the farm. Then the chicken went to the pig, but she did not want to leave her cool puddle. So, the chicken decided to ask the dog for help, but he wished to stay in his booth. Finally, the chicken went to the duck. After a short thought, she also refused to leave the pond. Nobody wanted to go with the chicken, so she had to look for food alone. So, a chicken walked across the field and found several grains of wheat. Joyful, she returned to the farm and decided to plant the seed she found. The chicken thought that friends could help her. She showed the grains to the cow and offered to plant them together. But the cow was still very hot. Then the hen approached the pig, but she refused to help. So, the chicken turned to the dog, but he did not want to leave the booth. The last hen asked for help from the duck, but she decided to stay in her favorite pond. And the chicken had to plant the seeds alone. Weeks passed, the rains began, and the seeds sprouted. It would be worth weeding them. Then the chicken asked her friends who could help her. The cow said it was raining today. The pig did not want to move. The dog was afraid to get dirty, and the duck complained about its health. And again the chicken had to do everything herself. The little red hen weeded the bed alone. After a while, the wheat grew and it was time to harvest. Then the chicken invited her friends to collect wheat together. But the cow was very busy. The pig did not want to get out of its puddle. The dog hid in his booth, and the duck did not listen to the chicken at all. So the little red hen worked until nightfall. She was harvesting wheat ear by ear. Finally, it was time to turn the grains into flour. The chicken again went to ask for help from her friends. Then the cow said that it was time for her to give milk, and refused to leave the barn. The pig didn't want to help either. The dog said that he did not know how to make flour, and the duck was very busy swimming in the pond. The little chicken chopped the wheat herself and turned it into flour. Finally, it's time to bake delicious bread. The chicken turned to her friends for help. But the cow had no time for work. The pig is too tired to help. The dog was busy, and the duck said that she did not know how to bake bread at all. This time, the chicken got really angry. She went to the kitchen, and she kneaded the dough from the flour that she ground. She put it in the mold herself, sent it to the oven and waited for the bread to be baked. When the aroma of fresh baked goods spread around, the chicken took the bread out of the oven. She went out into the garden, sat down at the table, and called her friends. Seeing fresh bread, all the inhabitants of the farm crowded around the chicken. They all wanted to eat well. But the chicken said that she would not share with her friends. After all, she made the bread herself, and therefore only she deserved to eat. And with great appetite, the chicken began to peck at the bread. But she couldn't come to terms with the fact that her friends were hungry. Then the chicken decided to share food, but only if her friends promised to continue to help her in everything. Now all the animals were ashamed of their behavior, because they realized that the chicken was right. And they promised to always help each other in everything. The little red hen knew that her friends were learning a real lesson. She shared bread with them. The friends ate together, became well-fed and contented. They lived on their farm for a long time and always helped each other. My grandfather planted a turnip, and it grew big, very big. Never seen such a turnip in the villages. And so my grandfather went to pick a turnip. Pulls, but cannot pull. The grandfather did not know what to do. And so, in that way, but it will not pull out in any way. Then the grandfather called the grandmother to pull the turnip. An old woman came, grabbed her grandfather by the back, and they began to pull the turnip together. The grandmother is for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they just can't pull it. It's just some kind of trouble. The grandfather pondered and realized that it was time to call the granddaughter for help. And they began to call the little girl at the top of their voices, so much so that the whole village trembled. The granddaughter came running, took hold of the grandmother's skirt, and again they began to pull the turnip. The granddaughter for the grandmother for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they cannot pull. The old people were upset, because such a turnip disappears. Then the granddaughter decided to call her dog, Bug, so that at least she could help pull the turnip. Bug came running, grabbed her granddaughter by the handkerchief, and they began to pull the turnip together. A bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. They pull, but they cannot pull again. The grandfather and grandmother were even more upset, because the uneaten turnip will disappear. Suddenly the bug barked and ran away. The dog returned not alone, but with a cat. She grabbed the beetle by the tail, and began to pull the turnip all together. A cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, but not stretch. The old people were upset with their granddaughter. They will not see a turnip. Suddenly the cat ran into the barn. She was gone for a long time, and she returned not alone, but with a mouse. The grandfather and the woman, and the granddaughter and the beetle, began to ask the mouse for help. She wagged her tail, squeaked twice, and then grabbed the cat's fur with her little paws. And again they pulled the turnip together. A mouse for a cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, and pulled the turnip. And so the grandfather decided to share the turnip. He took half for himself, gave a third to his grandmother, a little less to his granddaughter, a piece of the beetle, a half of a piece for a cat, and a very small crumb for a mouse. The animals were offended by their grandfather because they helped in the same way, and he divided the turnip dishonestly. A year has passed. Grandfather planted the turnip again, and it grew larger than before. For a long time such a turnip has not been seen in the villages.
Cool.
And so my grandfather went to pick a turnip. Pulls and this and that, but will not pull. The grandfather did not know what to do. And I decided to call my grandmother for help again. They began to pull the turnip together. The grandmother is for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they just can't pull it. Then the grandmother called her granddaughter. The granddaughter came running, and they pulled the turnip together. The granddaughter for the grandmother for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. Pull, but not stretch. The grandfather was upset and went to ask the animals for help. He called Bug, but she only turned her face away, wagged her tail and ran away. Grandfather found a cat, and she climbed onto the roof of the barn. Then the old man went to the mouse, but she did not listen to him either. Then the grandfather realized that the animals were offended by him for not honestly sharing the turnip. After all, without a mouse, a cat or a bug, grandfather cannot see a turnip. The old man thought, collected his thoughts, and went to the animals again. He apologized to the bug, asked the cat for forgiveness and promised the best piece of turnip for the mouse. Then the animals agreed to help their grandfather.
Okay.
And they began to pull the turnip together. A mouse for a cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, and pulled the turnip. Baba baked turnips. For a long time such delicious turnip has not been seen in the villages. And the grandfather divided the turnip equally, a piece for himself, grandmother and granddaughter. A bug with a cat and even a mouse were received each piece. Everyone was happy. So, they lived in peace and harmony happily ever after.